Chapter 3, The Tale You've Fallen Into. I wonder what sort of tale we've fallen into. That's from Sam in Fellowship of the Rings. Yes, that's so, said Sam, and we shouldn't be here at all if we'd known more about it before we started, but I suppose it's often that way. The brave things in the old tales and songs, Mr. Frodo's adventures, as I used to call them, I used to think that they were things the wonderful folk of the stories went out and looked for, because they wanted them, because they were exciting and life was a bit dull, a kind of sport, as you might say, but that's not the way of it with the tales that really mattered, or the ones that stay in the mind. Frodo seems to have just been landed in them. Usually their paths were laid that way, as you put it. Sometimes we think that adventures are things that happen to other people, not us. So when we're thrust into new experiences, we often clamor to get back to what seems like normalcy rather than employing curiosity to take a look around at our new surroundings. I would love to have the perspective of Samwise Gamgee. He didn't ask for a rambling life that had literally moments to steel himself for his journey into the unknown. Nevertheless, this humble son of a gardener, who had never before wandered more than a few miles from his home, had the good sense to recognize a new chapter, or entirely new tale, of his life in the midst of its unfolding. Sam embraced his new tale and turned all his acquired wisdom to ask questions and navigate some unknown territory. The adventure of a person who wakes up one day and finds him or herself a single parent is no less daunting in many ways than Sam's. So how does a single parent embrace the adventure and choose to live fully rather than just survive? My sister, a school teacher, she loves children, literature, and she has taught me much about the characters we have all learned to love. We have discussed James in James and the Giant Peach, Cinderella, Snow White, and Harry Potter, and it's amazing what all these characters have in common. These children have been abandoned and taken in by cruel family members, and despite being treated badly, their displayed goodness survives the abuse. These are our heroes. When I get to know people of character who have survived incredibly difficult childhoods, it reminds me that the good does indeed overcome evil. I have not only noted that there are good kids with terrible parents, but that there are terrible children with actually amazing parents. There doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason to know how our kids turn out because there are no guarantees. Just as it's hopeful that abusive parents cannot prevent some children from transcending their childhoods as loving, giving adults, so it's hopeful that diligent parents will have responsible kids. The good news that we cannot control other human beings has two sides. Everyone ultimately must choose for themselves who they will be. I have friends who have adopted children with disorders that have made their lives extremely difficult. Yet they give these children loving homes and stability and do their best while they endure being misunderstood and even blamed for the bad behavior of their children. It is so easy to blame the parents, but the behavior of some of these kids lines up exactly with their disorders. In the state of Washington, people who divorce are required to take parenting class if they have children. So I took the class, and it was a great learning experience. It focused on the kids. Some of the advice I gleaned: don't use your children to hurt your spouse. Don't keep them from the other parent, even if the ex is not paying child support. If I were pressed to summarize the big ideas of the class, it would be: put the kids first and don't put your stuff on them, or use them to deliver messages to your ex. Though I enjoyed my classmates, it made me sad to meet women who had been stay-home moms but were now forced into the workforce while the kids' lives were turned upside down. Dad leaves, mom goes to work, and they have to move, change schools. Children's lives are disrupted and they don't have any say in what's happening. I tried to make any decisions concerning my children with this in mind. The teacher of the class pointed out that kids may blame themselves or even question their parents' love for them. They don't want to choose between mom and dad. Understanding this, I made the choice not to go to work right away and leave them with a babysitter. Because of my choice, we ended up living in a camper trailer at a local campground. I discovered that living in a camper was great fun for young boys, but devastating for a 12-year-old girl. I struggled between thinking I'm 40 with 3 kids living in a camper and feeling like such a failure to, well, I'm on staff at this campground. Well, what a dream come true. It was a constant struggle, and it was a new kind of normal. Life, as my kids and I knew it, would never be the same. When I focused on the negative, I became depressed, and when I focused on the possibilities, I could find some peace. It was a constant battle trying to live in the positive. I had to make myself enjoy the day, because when I started to focus on the future, it was all so uncertain, and it would just make my head spin. My kids are amazing and resilient, and I'm so proud of them, but I expect they have issues from childhood to deal with as they grow older. I will support their process and own up to my contribution to their struggles. Still, I look back and see that I was trying to ease their pain in as many ways as I knew how. One time there was a job I wanted to take in another state. My kids, well, they didn't want to move away from their dad, so I turned it down. I also chose not to date again after a very short-lived second marriage. I decided the kids had been through enough, and I didn't want them to have to deal with a mom dating, falling in love, getting her heart broken again and again. It seemed it was the best choice for my family, and that was, well, almost 10 years ago. When our camping adventure was over, I had found a ranch where I could work and we could live. I thought it would be ideal because I had kept my daughter's beloved horse. She loved it. So I couldn't bear to take it away. When I responded to an ad for the place, I thought the ranch was a caretaking situation where we could live for at least reduced rent and take care of the horses. Well, it seemed ideal. The 55-acre tract was close to the kids' school and offered plenty of room for my boys to wander. I didn't have another job and I couldn't afford full rent. When the landlord found out what my real situation was, he told me he didn't want a single mom to rent the farm. We were devastated. Jenna and I cried and cried in our disappointment. It was ridiculous for me to think that I could rent a place like that with no job or means of income. What was I thinking? Well, 2 days later, the landlord called and said, "Come see the house." I told him, "Hey, I'm that single mom you didn't want." Well, he paused for a minute, and then he said, "I know, but everyone around here keeps telling me you're the one I need to rent this place." We fell instantly in love with the ranch, and we experienced a blessed reunion. Jenna's horse was finally with us. We got our dog out of foster care, and with the dog came a dusty kitty that had attached herself to our canine. It became my place of healing. There were gardens with flowers and raspberries, fruit trees, horses, even a special chicken. Snowy was the coolest fluffy white chicken. Dana caught her at a barnyard scramble, and she lived in a kitty carrier on our front porch. Our big dog Bear and Snowy became the best of friends, and we were a family again, and we were going to be okay. I can't remember the details of how rent and things worked out. I had help from friends and was able to secure a type of HUD financing that supplemented my rent. Sometimes things that seemed so impossible just worked out with neither rhyme or reason. But good things happen. Though I have stepped into many situations by faith, they don't all work out as beautifully as this did. But every one of them is an adventure, and I'm glad I have chosen to learn from the experiences. I hear people tell me about their dreams, and they'll say, "I don't want to get my hopes up." So I say, well, get your hopes up. They say, "I don't want to be disappointed," and I say, go ahead, risk being disappointed. It won't kill you. Disappointment may make you feel as if your heart is breaking, but it's all part of the adventure. When life hands you crap, you've got to live through it. I'm not saying it's easy, and when times get tough, our hearts get broken. We tell ourselves too quickly we're never going to do that again, and that's just self-protection. If we resolve to never be hurt again, then we're in danger of making safety our highest priority. What kind of way is that to live? We end up in isolation, not trusting anybody else, and never experiencing anything remarkable. I challenge you to live the adventure. Wonder what is next. Find an adventure like Lord of the Rings or C.S. Lewis' Chronicles of Narnia and read them. Read them to your kids. Some people call those books fantasy, but the characters live with loyalty, courage, and passion, and that sure seems like the way we ought to live in the real world. Why not begin to see life as an adventure? What if we could wonder what's next instead of hoping for one ultimate ending that we can control? Live in the journey. Okay, so I am looking back as I say this. I wasn't always able to do this, but when I did, it felt more alive. I came against huge challenges and things that seemed impossible, but when I chose to believe it, it was all part of the adventure, and somehow, some way, we would get through it. I sensed I was part of something bigger than myself, and there were times when I would be in bed at night, and I would let that little thought, "I can't do this, I'm not going to make it," sneak in. And when that happened, I couldn't just think about myself. I told myself, somehow, some way, we're going to make it. We have to. And that kept me going. It was logical to think I wasn't going to make it. Even if one breadwinner works full-time in this economy, it may not be enough to raise a family. Community, friends, family, and faith, believing in the adventure, the what's next, all of that kept me going. It's there for each of us, though it may be hard to recognize at first. It may be in the form that seems unfamiliar. I prayed my eyes would be open to see the adventure through all my worry and neediness. When I was first told that someone in my church had a camper they wanted to give me and my kids, in my ingratitude, I'm pretty sure if I didn't say it out loud, I certainly thought, over my dead body, will I ever live in a camper? Well, it didn't take long for me to run out of options, and what seemed like certain death became the adventure of a lifetime. I'm really thankful for that wonderful camper. Now, go figure. I learned early on not to talk bad about the kids' dad to them or in front of them. The times when I slipped, I could see it hurt them, so I stopped. One time I was frustrated and venting to a friend when I thought the kids were asleep, but one of them overheard and corrected me the next morning. The ex is still their parent. I tried to find what good I could, what truth I could, and focus on that. I bit my tongue a lot, but I validated the kids when they were frustrated or disappointed with Dad. I would say, well, that must be hard, or I can see you're really ticked off. But there was no defending or blaming, just validating. Doing this validating without getting all puffed up thinking I was the better parent for the moment could be a little tough. I knew that if I used their frustration to get on my soapbox and say everything I thought was wrong with their dad, it would only backfire. I knew that what I wanted was to be vindicated and my experience to be believed. But I controlled my tongue, and I knew that in a few days they would be over it. But I would have really blown it in their eyes had I joined in the venting. Some friends who knew the real story would see my restraint and call me a saint. And as much as I like being called a saint, the truth is, I was just surviving. I wanted a relationship with my kids more than I wanted to prove how much I'd been betrayed or hurt. In the end, I know my kids have been grateful that my ex and I can get along and the whole family can be together for graduations and weddings. I've heard women who talk about their exes in front of their kids, and when I mention it to them, they tell me they don't really care, or they insist the children are too young to understand. I've even heard women talk about the kid's dad in a detrimental way while they're still married to the guy. Don't do this to your kids. I've discovered kids know more of what you are talking about than you might think. They're also so smart, and they read between the lines. I know what it's like to be hurting and angry or sad. I know how hard it is to find time away from the kids in order to safely vent, but it's so worth it to find a way. When you were a child, did your parents talk about each other to you? Did they do it in front of you? What did that feel like? So here's the deal. You have complete permission to vent and yell, break dishes, throw anything you want out of range of children, of course. But do it with friends, have a party, get it out, but do it on your time. This is a good policy for frustrated grandparents, too. Don't badmouth the kid's parent, even the prodigal one. As this adventure I found myself in continued, my greatest fear just had to be realized. My daughter went to live with her dad. Now, it was the best thing for her at the time and also for the boys and me. It gave us the freedom to make a move we had been paralyzed to make. But I couldn't stop crying. I was heartbroken. I missed her every day, and she was only about a mile away. It was supposed to be temporary, but it hurt like crazy. Still, it was good for her to have time with her dad, and he had different rules than I did, and it was often difficult for me to let go. I was often tempted to threaten or boss or cajole her from afar and try to get her dad more involved in my agenda. I discovered the illusion of control is, well, just that, an illusion. Her dad and I had a different belief system, and in the end, she had to choose what she believes. I had to let her live her own adventure, and I had to let go and trust the work I had done as a parent in the early years was enough to get her through with no guarantees. Still, I tried to guilt my poor daughter into coming home. I didn't think she or I would survive her living anywhere but with me. And I did survive. Well, and so did she. I'm so grateful for my friend Wendy, who was also divorced and had remarried. She also had a daughter who had gone to live with her dad. So we had lunch together once a week until I moved away. We reminded each other of the choice of what was more important, being right or having a relationship with our girls. I'm so grateful for her because many times I wanted to try to force the issue and get my daughter to move back. I would write her long letters before reconsidering and tearing them up. Then I would write a long letter to her dad and tear that up. But Wendy's humor and gentle support would bring me back to reality. The reality was that our daughters were living with their fathers, and it was not the end of the world. It was something they needed, and it was a way they could have some choice in their lives, no matter what. We so love our kids that when they move out, we feel we have failed them, and that is difficult to deal with. When my daughter had decided not to come back home, I happened to be attending a Women of Faith conference in Oregon. I was crying a lot more than I was listening to the speakers, and the lady sitting next to me started talking with me at the break. She was telling me that her daughter had moved out and was living with her dad. She told me it was the best thing for her daughter. She told me how hard it was, but that time with her dad was something she really needed. And after throwing a fit, she realized she had to let go. Somehow, this made me feel better, though my feeling like a failure was about me and didn't accomplish anything for my daughter. I'm not saying I hadn't messed up, but I began to trust that it was the right thing, and I'm happy to say that today my daughter is a grown woman, married, and we have a wonderful relationship. My biggest fear was that she would grow up and not want to be around me or have anything to do with me, and it didn't happen. I'm really grateful for that. I wonder if I could have let go of that fear and recognized it early on, if we could have escaped some of the drama that sapped our energy and led to brooding. It was fear more than love that made behaviors that controlled my daughter more appealing. What felt like I was in control was just an illusion masquerading as control. The hardest challenge for me is admitting I cannot make anyone else do my bidding. Once I started thinking about this and putting my coaching skills into action, I learned some valuable lessons from my kids. For example, they would see movies I didn't approve of when they were with their dad. Our rating choices didn't quite match up, and we would have discussions about the movie. What did you like? What did it mean? I tried to remain non-defensive, difficult for me. I learned what they were thinking and what was influencing them. I tried to ask questions that would make them think and challenge their values and who they wanted to be. When the kids' dad took them to the gay, now called Pride Parade in Seattle, with his partner, we had a lively discussion about that too. I couldn't use my hurt heart to try to turn them against their dad. I loved it when they could accept him for who he was. I would wince when I would overhear their friends ask questions like, "Who's that guy who's always with your dad?" And my kids would say, "It's his boyfriend." I would breathe a sigh of relief when the other kids would just say, "Oh, cool." It was a tremendous pressure to feel responsible for what their friends said. And there were other overwhelming pressures. My boys loved video games, and on the news we were hearing reports of children who played video games too much and then tried to kill people, as in the Columbine disaster in Colorado in 1998. This was daunting for a single parent. We can only monitor so much. I turned the living room into the video game room because I could be in the kitchen and hear what was going on. When the kids are wrapped up in what they're doing, they forgot their parent is nearby. I knew I couldn't keep them from playing the video games, and though I could somewhat monitor the ratings, they could still play those games at their dad's because he allowed them. Timidly, I would ask them the reality of the game experience, and they thought my question was ridiculous. They seemed to get that just because they could drive a hot car in a video game didn't mean they knew how to get in a car and drive. They played some violent videos, but didn't exhibit violent behavior themselves. I'm not making light of video games. Too much fantasy can rob families of relational time. I'm just highlighting my fears about how responsible I felt for my kids' choices. I worked very hard at keeping them busy by living on a farm and giving them outside places to enjoy. I tried to put a limit on too much, but there's a limit to what limits can accomplish. Try though I might, I could not control any of those who were closest to me. My youngest son also went to live with his dad his last year of high school. That was the way things worked out, and it wasn't what I wanted. But with divorce, things are rarely the way you want them. It's a school for learning that one cannot control others. I'm learning it is futile to attempt to impose my agenda to guarantee my life turns out the way I want it. But most of all, I learned this turn of events was not a tragedy, it was life. And it was far better to embrace the adventure of it all. Some things seemed out of my control, but I still had to find a way to muddle through. One of those was the dilemma of needing to make a home where I could be available for my kids, but also needing to bring income to pay the rent and keep food on the table. I tried many things. I had a home business of sewing and landscaping. I ran the community toddler gym so my kids could come with me. I felt strongly about finding a way to be with my kids while I did this. I had read in all the books about helping children through divorce that age 12 is the hardest age for a child to deal with a breakup. My daughter was 12 and my boys were not far behind. I knew other women going through divorce who had jobs and had a system in place so they could keep working. But for us, it wasn't going to work because I had always been a stay-home mom. I wanted to be a stay-home entrepreneur as well, but this didn't relieve much stress because it takes time to build a home business. I knew I couldn't leave my kids for 8 hours a day, not only because of the breakup, but because I couldn't make enough money to pay daycare for 3 kids. I felt even stronger about this because I had a child who didn't do well with babysitting situations. When I went to the welfare office and asked for help, they told me I would have to attend job seminars and begin working in order to get help. The problem was I had a skill set, but under the circumstances, I could not use them in my community. Imagine living in a small, tiny town. Everyone knows my husband has come out in a big way, and even going to the store became a challenge. People would look at me with sad eyes and looks of pity. People didn't know what to say or do. I needed some time and space to heal, and working from home seemed to me to be the best choice for my kids and myself. Some people translated my not wanting to work away from home as being lazy. I believed something would work out. I was a life coach, and when it was a brand new field, I knew building a business would take time. So I did what I could. I guaranteed the kids were in school, and I found a job doing paperwork for someone at a radio station. Then the day came I had to go to my landlady and tell her I could no longer afford rent. I would have to move, and that's when I humbly said yes to the camper, and a friend found me a job at a camp nearby. The people in charge accepted me with open arms. They gave me a slot for the trailer and let me work in the kitchen. Problem solved. The kids were with me and had an entire camp for their backyard, and Mom was a hop, skip, and a jump away in the kitchen. My coach, Patrick Snow, says all great people have times in their life that look like failure, but it's just a time, part of the process. Living at camp was a mixed blessing because, though in retrospect it was good in every way, in my mind I couldn't get past the fact that at this time of my life I was living in a camper with 3 kids and I just felt like a failure. So I had to reframe it and say I'm on the staff of Lakeside Bible Camp. My kids are having the summer of their life, and I think that people on an adventure need to learn the fine art of reframing. Reframing is not unreality, it's seeing what's truly there, it's faith. And when I think about reframing, I often think of the quote by old curmudgeon Henry Ford, who said something like, whether you believe you can or can't, you are right. To fully enjoy the adventure of life, we need to approach every day with a sense of awe and wonder. When I realized that what at first felt like a failure had become vacation with a purpose, it was like the first sight of the Grand Canyon. It was so breathtaking that I had to pinch myself to make sure this was reality and not some incredible dream sequence. And faith is closely connected with hope. I hoped my kids would be full, safe, and happy. I thought that meant a spacious house with a picket fence and a fat bank account. So I didn't see it coming. My hopes were realized on an island campground. When those blessings happen, they are little reminders, tastes of heaven, that help us to trust the next thing that seems out of control. See, control kills wonder and discourages faith, trust, and belief. If we believe something will happen, we can wonder and enjoy the journey. Wondering about possibilities open us to the opportunities that can come our way. Not always, but usually they are different from, how we originally envisioned them. Thank goodness. I was angling for a better job at the high school. It was in the attendance office, and I believed it was perfect for me. I hoped beyond hope that I would get the job. I needed that job. That job would solve all my problems. I wasn't even considered for the position. They already had their eye on someone from within the ranks. I was devastated. I became very hopeless and depressed. Kind of funny, what I hoped for didn't work out, so I became hopeless. See, if the ball didn't bounce my way, I didn't want to play. What I didn't know is that there was a job for me, and it was better pay, more stable, and I was able to do it for 4 years. Get this, my office was in the high school. Thank goodness I didn't get what I thought I wanted instead of what I really wanted. I still struggle with control, but when I wonder rather than demand something, I have peace rather than that intense desperation of, this has to work out. After that job, I was offered an overnight full-time position where I previously worked part-time. It was very difficult to work those hours, and I wanted the job, but had my kids been younger, I would not have accepted it. The boys were in high school, though, and their sister, who was going to cosmetology school, wanted to move home. The timing seemed perfect, and we all know no matter how good our kids are, they can't be home alone all night, every night, because the other teens find out. Having their older sister at home at night took care of that issue. Working all night had its own frustrations. I felt like a zombie most of the time. But I was able to be awake and available in the evenings before I had to leave. Time and circumstances all come into play when it comes to working. You know that your family needs you, and you know what you can handle and what they can't handle. Trust what you know. Wonder about what could happen and stand by what you believe in. If you end up in a situation that seems hopeless and dead end, change plans. Start your plan by believing something better will happen and wondering about what could be next. Ask yourself what it is you really want and be open to what it will take to get there. Hire a coach or get some complimentary coaching calls. I know there are always circumstances that make things harder to make changes. You may have a child with a disability or chronic illness, and you absolutely can't give up insurance. We have to have something to dream about, something to look forward to, and the good kind of hope for. We have so many pressures and demands, but we cannot lose sight of what is good and beautiful. Find what you love and fill your cup, and then you have something to offer your family. Life truly is an adventure. Adventure isn't just for those with dull life looking for a little fun. Adventure is life, and it happens to all of us. We are the character in our story, and we choose how we will participate, fully or dragging our feet the whole way. I wonder what sort of tale you have landed in. Just wondering. In Chapter 1, you answered the question, what are your struggles? Look at them and write how each one might be turned into an adventure. Is there something you want, but it's getting blocked by shoulds? Shoulding is very dangerous. What shoulds do you have rattling around in your head? For single moms, it might be mom guilt. I should. You fill in the blank. When you really think about the shoulds you have written above, are they really true? Example, I should be able to do it all. Really? Well, I give you permission to address these shoulds, each one, and speak the truth. No, I should not be able to do it all. Nobody can. What do you know is true for you? Example, no one can do it all. Change it to, this is what I do well, and make a list. Address each should and knock it out of the ballpark. For me, most of the time, fear was on the forefront, wondering how I would make it and feeling like I was drowning. What fears are you reacting to? Although the feeling is so intense, remind yourself of what is true right now today. Example, I won't make it financially. 2, today I am okay. Continue down the list to what is true and present in this moment. As a single mom, we have to let go of some things, yet others might think or should on us to do more. What can you let go of in spite of what others think? Example, I didn't have time to do all the laundry all the time, and neither did the kids. We got a big basket and threw all the socks in it, saving us time of matching and putting away. It sat on the dryer, and that's where we got our socks each day. Now that you have thought about this, what is true for you, and what can you let go of? What's your gut telling you? Are you giving yourself permission to let go a little bit? Does this line up with your values? For example, letting some house duties go to spend more time with the kids. Now it's time to focus on you. Extreme self-care, I know, seems impossible, but let's just start with this. What are 20 things you love? I know at first this can be hard, but you will get to 20 soon. List 20 things you love. When you get overwhelmed with shoulds, look at this list and use the things you love to find some peace and respite, to get the courage to wonder rather than react. Use it to help take energy away from the fear or overwhelm that you are feeling.